During this section of the DVD, I'd like to talk briefly about the all-important tripod. Now, the tripod that I would recommend for this Panasonic rig is the Vinten Vision 5AS. As you can see, this Panasonic camera is fully loaded with quite a lot of accessories. You've got a Keypro mini digital recorder on the back, you've got the Crozio matte box on the front, a Carl Zeiss compact prime lens, a follow focus unit, and the rails. So all of this adds up to quite a considerable weight. So the Vinten Vision 5AS is perfectly suited and will balance this rig to perfection. If you're going to be using a Panasonic camera in its basic bare bones form, just a camera on its own with no recorder, no matte box, no follow focus system and no heavy lens, just say for example a basic lightweight Panasonic Lumix lens, then this tripod would be a little bit over the top and it wouldn't balance it properly. The string would be too strong. So if you're using just a basic camera with a lightweight lens and nothing else, I would recommend the Vinten Vision Blue tripod that's got a lighter string in it, that's designed more for DSLRs and smaller lightweight cameras without all the add-ons. So this tripod here, the Vinten Vision 5AS, is available in various guises. It's available in carbon fibre or aluminium alloy, and as a single stage or a two stage, and with either a mid-level spreader or a floor spreader. Now the one that I've got here is the carbon fibre model, which I prefer. The main difference between carbon and aluminium is the carbon fibre won't rust or corrode in salt water, whereas the aluminium one will. But the aluminium one can be repaired if it's dented, for example, whereas the carbon fibre can't really, or it's a lot more difficult to. Another advantage the carbon fibre one has is it's a more rigid material, so there's less chance of getting leg twist during a panning shot, especially if you do fast whip pans with a certain amount of drag. It's also a more lightweight material, and I just prefer it because I think it just looks a lot sexier. I just prefer the way it feels and handles. So at least Vinten have given you the choice there. You can have either aluminium or carbon fibre. Now this model I've got here is a single stage, which basically means it's only got one leg locking system with the legs in two parts. It's also available as a two-stage one, which means the legs will be in three sections with two of these locking levers at different sections. Now again, it's a personal choice. I prefer a single stage tripod because it's quicker and easier to set up, because you've only got three of these leg lock systems instead of six. And if you're working outside in the cold, it's really much more forgiving having just three of them to work with. But again, that's my personal opinion. A disadvantage of having a single stage is that when it's collapsed, it is 5 or 6 inches longer than a two-stage system. But unless you've got the smallest car boot in the world, then it's not really much of a big deal. And again, it's personal choice, and Vinten have given you the option of either a single stage or a two-stage. The 5AS I'm using here is the mid-level spreader version, which is my personal choice, simply because I don't like having to get down on my hands and knees to mess around with floor spreaders. This is fully automated, so when you pull one leg out, the other two will automatically open with it, and it's just a very quick and easy system to work with. With the floor spreaders, I've always felt that they're designed more for studio use, or if you're shooting indoors in offices where you've got a nice, true, flat floor. But when you're working outdoors, in locations like this, for example, you might have an uneven floor, and having a mid-level spreader with 3 feet is just a much easier system to work with. But again, Vinten have given you the choice. You've got a mid-level or a floor spreader. The choice is yours entirely. Vinten are one of the few manufacturers to have perfected their balance system, and the one that's built into the 5AS is absolute perfection. It's one of the best I've ever used. You'd be amazed at how many people don't know what a balancing system does, or at least how to set it up. Quite often I ask cameramen if they know how to set up and balance a tripod, and they'll say yes, you simply turn this dial underneath here, level the tripod off with the spirit bubble and lock it off. Well, that's not actually balancing, that's simply leveling the tripod off, as you probably know. Now, you may or may not know how to balance a tripod with a system like this. If you do, I'm going to run you through the process of doing it anyway, just to confirm it. And if you don't, then I'll run through it so I can show you how it's done properly. If you've got the tripod balanced to perfection, then I guarantee it will improve your shots so much. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to run through the balancing process and explain what it is and how to do it correctly. So the first thing that you've got to do is find the camera's centre of gravity point. But before you do this, it's important that you have any accessories attached to the camera that are going to be used. So the digital recorder's on the back, the matte box is on the front, the lens is on, the focus pulling rig's on. Anything else that you might be using, like an on-camera light, make sure all these things are attached to the camera first before trying to find its centre of gravity. So, to find the camera's centre of gravity, what you do is you basically pick the camera up and you let it hang via the handle, and the aim is to get the camera to line up horizontally with the floor. So this, for example, wouldn't be lined up horizontally. As you can see, it's back heavy. Now, by moving my fingers towards the back of the handle and letting it dangle, that is pretty much horizontal to the floor in about that position. So once we've found the camera's centre of gravity point, which is about here, you then draw an imaginary line straight down the side of the camera to the bottom, and then we put the camera back on the tripod and continue with the balancing process. Now, it's important to get the tripod plate lined up with the central point of gravity on the camera. You don't have to get this 100%, because if it's not 100%, you can actually move the camera back and forth within the head like so to make fine adjustments. But I personally like to get the tripod plate bang in the middle. It's all about preparation, and getting this right at this stage will make balancing the tripod easier at a later stage. So the next stage of the balancing process is to make sure you have the pan and tilt locked off, and that all the drag controls are dialed out to 0, so there's no drag anywhere, and also that the balance is dialed out as well, so there's no balance being turned in there at all. And then holding the camera, you unlock the tilt and see if the camera will basically sit balanced perfectly. In this case, you can see that it wants to actually drop forward slightly. So what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to loosen up the tripod plate and slide the camera back about 1 centimetre, and then lock that off, just so I can get the camera to sit naturally in that position. What we're trying to achieve here is kind of a seesaw effect, where the balance and weight at each end, the front and the back, is exactly the same, so that it requires the same amount of pressure to get the camera to fall either forwards or backwards, like so. Now, as you can see, if I let go of the camera, it will actually fall down and it will bash against the tripod legs. So what we're trying to do is just to get it to basically sit bang in the middle, perfectly balanced, so we have the same amount of weight at the front and at the back. So that's a starting point. It's perfectly balanced. So the next stage is to actually dial in the spring on the balance control to get the camera to not fall down, like so, to the front or to the back. So to do this, I'm just going to come around to the front here and start to dial in balance. Now, we're going to hold the camera down at about a 45-degree angle like that, keeping my finger on it to prevent it falling, and I'm going to continue to dial in balance here and keep checking it until it gets to a point that the camera doesn't actually fall down forward. And what this is doing, it's actually tightening up the spring inside the head to force the camera to actually pull back to this position. But we don't want to do this too much that it will actually pull the camera upwards, because that would defeat the object. So we're getting there. We're going to dial in a little bit more, a wee bit more. Now, as you can see, that looks about right there. So the camera will sit there, and if we move it forward and take your hand away from the pan handle, it's not actually going to fall down and hit the leg. It will stay as if by magic in that position. Now, just to demonstrate the spring in this one, if I keep going, as you can see there, I've dialed in too much spring tension and it wants to pull the camera back up to the horizontal position. So I'm actually going to dial some of that out until it doesn't do that, and now it will sit any position you place it in. So you've also got to check the back and make sure that the back is going to work exactly the same way as the front. So it's not actually going to fall, it's falling down a little bit there, so I'm just going to make a small adjustment to the tripod head, the plate that is, and slide it forward a little bit, and then just double check that. So at the front it will stay in any position, and at the back it will also stay in any position. So now we have the tripod head perfectly balanced, but we still don't have any drag dialed in. So I'm actually going to dial in just a small amount of drag. I like to put it to about number 3. And the same for the pan, I'm going to put that to about number 3 also, which gives a nice amount of drag control for both pan and tilt. So now that we've got this camera and the head all perfectly balanced up, this means you can actually go in or out of any shot and let go of the pan handle, and the camera, as if by magic, will stay in that position. Now, this is great for those establishing shots where you might start on the sky and then you would basically tilt down to reveal the building or whatever it is you're filming at the bottom, and then you can take your hand away and the camera will stay there all day long. Now, the advantage to doing this is that when you get to the end of a shot, normally you might come down into it, and when you get there, you'd have to stand there and hold the pan handle for another 5 or 10 seconds until you get the handle at the end of your clip, or for the duration of the clip you want. Now, as long as your hand is on the pan handle, your body might be moving, and that could be causing the shot to move. But by having the tripod head perfectly balanced like this, you can come down into your shot like so, stop at the end, and then literally take your hand away, and you can leave the camera there all day long to record another 10-20 seconds without any worry or concern that the shot is going to be wobbling because of your hand being on the pan handle. So this is the Vinten Vision 5AS tripod. It's definitely one of the best tripods I've ever used, and it's certainly the tripod that I would recommend for the Panasonic AF101 when it's rigged up like this with all these accessories. The balancing system on this tripod is absolutely perfection, and I guarantee that it will make your shots much more professional.